January 21, 1998. 6 in the morning. A grandmother walks into her grandchildren's house. Everything looks normal. The door is locked. The windows are shut. Nothing broken, nothing forced. She walks past her granddaughter Stephanie's room, and there she is, 12 years old, lying in the doorway of her own bedroom, stabbed 9 times. No one had broken into that house. Every door was locked from the inside, so there was only one question left, and that question destroyed a family. If no one came in from outside, then who was already inside? The police thought they found their answer, but they were wrong, and a 14-year-old boy paid the price for it, forced into confessing to the murder of his own sister. This is the story of Stephanie Crowe, and it proves one thing. When the police chase a confession instead of the truth, justice is the first thing to die. Stephanie lived in Escondido, California, with her parents Stephen and Cheryl, her older brother Michael, who was 14, and her younger sister Shannon. That night, the whole family went to sleep like any other night. No noise. Nothing out of place. When Stephanie's body was found the next morning, she had 9 stab wounds. 2 of them were fatal. One had severed a major artery, the other had punctured a lung. Investigators said she had died at least 6 hours before she was discovered, somewhere in the middle of the night, while the rest of the house slept just a few feet away. There was no forced entry, no broken locks, no smashed windows, which meant, in the eyes of the police, the killer had to be someone already inside that house. But there was something the police almost ignored. That same night, a 28-year-old drifter named Richard Tuitt had been seen wandering through the Crowe family's neighborhood, knocking on doors, peering into windows. Several neighbors were unsettled enough to call the police on him. Tuitt already had a criminal record. He had also been diagnosed with schizophrenia. When police picked him up and questioned him, they noticed scratches on his body and a cut on his hand. They took his clothes as evidence, and then they let him go. They didn't think he was capable of something like this. Their attention had already shifted somewhere else entirely. It shifted to Michael Crowe, Stephanie's own brother. Think about that for a second. A 14-year-old boy. The night before, he was sleeping under the same roof as his sister. The next day, he's sitting alone in an interrogation room. No lawyer, no parent, no one from his family beside him. The questioning went on for hours, sometimes 9-10 hours at a stretch. Investigators kept telling him the same thing, over and over. Somewhere in his mind, the memory was buried. His conscience just wasn't letting it surface yet. It's a technique designed to do exactly one thing: make a person start doubting themselves. And it worked. A grieving 14-year-old boy, exhausted and terrified, slowly started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he really had done it. Eventually, after hours of pressure, he said things that sounded like a confession. No weapon was ever found. No motive was ever established. Just an exhausted child in a room he wasn't allowed to leave until the officers were satisfied. 2 of his friends, Joshua Treadway and Aaron Hauser, were pulled into the same nightmare. They too were questioned for hours and eventually made statements that tied them to the murder as well. All 3 boys were charged with murder and conspiracy. A judge ruled they would be tried as adults. They spent 6 months in jail as prosecutors prepared for trial. Teenagers locked up because of words pulled out of them under relentless pressure. This case would later become one of the most cited examples of a false confession in American legal history, proof of how easily an aggressive interrogation can make an innocent person admit to a crime they never committed. By January 1999, jury selection was already underway. 3 boys, one of them Stephanie's own brother, were about to stand trial for her murder. And then, everything changed. New DNA testing came back on a piece of evidence that had been sitting in storage for almost a year. A red sweatshirt, the one Richard Tuitt had been wearing that night. The lab results confirmed it. The blood on that sweatshirt belonged to Stephanie, the same man police had stopped, questioned, and released, because they decided he wasn't capable of it. The day before trial was set to begin, prosecutors dropped every charge against the three boys. Years later, a judge went even further, formally declaring them factually innocent. Not just not guilty, but innocent. Their arrest records were destroyed. Michael Crowe, once accused of murdering his own sister, was finally free. 5 years after the murder, Richard Tuitt was finally arrested and charged. In 2004, a jury convicted him of voluntary manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 13 years in prison. But the story didn't end there. In 2011, a federal appeals court ruled that Tuitt hadn't received a fair trial because the judge had limited how much the defense could cross-examine a key prosecution witness. His conviction was overturned, and he was granted a new trial. In 2013, at his second trial, the defense argued that the blood on Tuitt's clothing hadn't come from him committing the murder. It had gotten there through contamination during crime scene analysis. This time, the jury acquitted him. His attorney called the entire case a miscarriage of justice. But Stephanie's father and brother have never stopped believing that Richard Tuitt killed her. The case left a lasting mark on the American justice system. The Crowe family and the families of the other two boys won a civil rights lawsuit against the police departments involved, on the grounds that their constitutional rights against self-incrimination had been violated. To this day, this case is studied in police interrogation training, a warning of how a coerced confession can destroy innocent lives, especially when the person in that room is a child. As for Richard Tuitt, he was picked up on smaller charges again in later years. But legally, he has been acquitted, and the truth of who really killed Stephanie Crowe has never been officially settled. A 12-year-old girl, murdered in her own bedroom. A brother, pressured into confessing to a crime he never committed. And a case that, even decades later, still doesn't have a final answer that everyone agrees on. It's a reminder of how fragile justice really is, and how one wrong interrogation can wreck more lives than the crime itself.